In January of 2015, you made an announcement on your Facebook page. It was, I'm finally able to tell you I will be playing Belle in Disney's new live-action Beauty and the Beast. It was such a big part of my growing up. It almost feels surreal that I'll get to dance, to be our guest, and sing something there. My 6-year-old self is on the ceiling, heart bursting. What changed between then and now? Like, what was the thing you didn't expect that you wish you'd known back then? Was it the singing? Was that the hardest part to learn?
That it was all going to be okay. Hands down. I think, there were so many new things that I was taking on with the role. I'd never done a musical before. I'd never sung. I always sung, but I'd never sung publicly before. I'd never sung in front of anyone professionally before, in front of anyone else. I'd never horse ridden for a movie before. I'd never danced for a movie before. So I kind of went into this boot camp for 3 months before we started shooting, which was singing 4 times a week, dancing 5 times a week, writing 3 times a week. Yeah, Belle boot
Do you
camp.
ever combine them? Sing and ride a horse?
I'll play one at the same time. Actually, I don't. Thank God. I think my brain would maybe explode.
Well, you didn't sound intimidated. You sound jubilant. My 6-year-old self is on the ceiling.
On the ceiling, yeah. No, I think I feel so blessed to have already played one of my childhood heroes, which was Hermione, and then to get to play another one. I feel like that's almost unique to an actress to get to do that. So I was like, wow, this is. I just feel incredibly lucky to have the career that I'm having.
In my house, we are big animation fans. My wife and my kids love the Disney cartoons, and even among people who grew up with them and are now adults in their older years, grew up with these Cinderella and Pinocchio. Beauty and the Beast is a much more recent one from the 90s, but it means so much. Like, the geekdom around animation is as intense as Star Wars or Marvel, DC, Harry Potter.
Totally.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I feel like it unlocks for people something from their childhood, something that feels so deep inside them, and something that they've always known. It has a level of familiarity that is just so intense and special. When I talk about prep and whatever else, it was in the build up to the movie, I really felt the pressure of that, not just from me loving those films, but knowing how much this character means to so many people.
What was it you didn't want to change about her? What do you think is fundamental to the character of Belle that needs to stay the same in both the animation and the live-action version?
What I love about Belle is that she's kind of, if you look at her within sort of the category of those Disney characters, she's kind of the rogue. She takes a different course. That was always what I loved about Belle. When I think about Belle, I think about her singing Belle Reprise, which is her sort of coming out of her house and singing this song, which is just kind of bursting out of her, which is, I know everyone around me can't understand why I don't want what everyone else thinks that I should want, and which is being handed to me, but I really just want something more. I want something else. This doesn't fit. I don't fit. She kind of, like the Robert Frost poem, she takes the road less traveled, and I always really identified with that. Bella's no sheep. She's really on her own, just on her own path.
She's friends with sheep, though.
She's friends with sheep. She is friends with sheep, but she's on her own thing, and there's this defiance, and that energy, that spirit was really what I identified with in her.
That's her Sound of Music scene too, where she runs up into the hills and she's kind of turning around and looking down at her town. And it's also an expression of loneliness, isn't it? Because she says that for once it would be grand to have someone understand. I have so much more than they have planned. And you get the sense of how isolated she is from everyone.
Definitely. And I think that in the end is where Beast and Belle find their common ground, is because they both feel really lonely. They both feel like outsiders in their own world. Belle is kind of trapped in her surroundings, in her village, and Beast is trapped in this castle. And there's this sort of strange mirroring, there's this strange parallel where only when they're together do things kind of feel like they make sense. And that's where they start to really fall in love. They make sense of one another for each other.
So the opposite of the question is, that was what you wanted to keep the same about them.
Yes.
What did you want to change? What did you want to bring to it to make it your own, your version of Belle?
What's so beautiful about the story as a whole is this idea that Belle is able to see past these extraneous, external, superficial qualities of Beast. She's able to see deeper. And that's one of her that's kind of one of her special powers, is that she can see behind his anger and frustration, see the pain and vulnerability and insecurity. And her beauty is put in contrast to his beastliness. And it's kind of what creates that beautiful opposition.
The following ad is being condensed for your viewing convenience.
I just switched to Geico, saved a whole bunch.
Car insurance, huh?
Yeah.
Saving money? Super easy. Oh man, who doesn't like saving money? Am I right?
I'm not cleaning that up.
Everybody has their own unique way to brighten their day, which is why every Dunkin' latte, cappuccino, and macchiato is carefully crafted with espresso and milk, just the way you like it. Your coffee, your Dunkin'.
So in the original, you don't get much of a sense of who is Belle, what does she do, where does she come from, how does she spend her time before she goes and meets Beast. And so I wanted to create a bit more of a backstory for her. You kind of get a little bit of a sense of why she doesn't fit in, like she likes to read books and she's not desperately in love with Gaston, but why is it that she's such an outsider? Why does she feel like she doesn't fit so much? And I really wanted to get to the bottom of that. We kind of made her this mad, wacky inventor, which was originally kind of like her father was that role, and it kind of became more about Belle. Kevin Kline's character for my father became much more of this slightly frightened, slightly nervous, cautious, but very sensible, wise, loving father. So it was really fun to do that and add that on.
Yeah, crazy old Maurice was
building
like a wood cutting machine.
Yeah, but now it's Belle. Belle's like creating this mad. She essentially creates a prototype for the first washing machine, so that instead of having to do the washing herself, she can sit and read while her machine is taking care of it.
It's a barrel with like a thing that attaches to a donkey
that pulls it around. I know, it's a whole thing.
Donkey-powered washing machine.
Yeah, donkey-powered washing machine.
That's also a really traumatic scene in the film, because she doesn't just invent this thing that starts washing the clothes in the public square. She's using her spare time to teach another small girl to read. And then the villagers come, and I don't want to give away too much, but they destroy her machine. There's like an anti-intellectualism in this village, which you get from her song.
Yeah.
There must be more than this provincial life, but you really get a sense of it in this movie. They're hostile to her bringing change and her intelligence. They don't think women should read.
They don't think women should read, and it goes further than that, which is really interesting that you picked up on that, which is that they're deeply suspicious of intelligence and anyone that, is going beyond that, and they don't like anything that's foreign, unknown, that might be beyond their realm of experience. And so they really do, breaking the washing machine is symbolic of not just them, breaking something she spent hours working on, but them really trying to break her spirit and kind of trying to push her and mold her into a more acceptable version of herself. I think that happens a lot with women and a lot with young girls, where it's like, oh, that's nice, but why don't we just kind of push you this way a little bit? And why
don't you do what's expected or traditional?
We prefer this aspect of your personality. Let's cultivate that area or that sort of thing that you're good at, and let's just kind of push that side a little bit.
I felt plot-wise it also explained why she maybe wasn't so eager to get back to the village.
It was very important to me that Belle tried to meaningfully, try to escape, and only at the point when Beast comes and saves her, and she in turn saves him from the wolves. And there's kind of this unspoken agreement of, I'm not a prisoner anymore now, I'm here on my own terms, and I'm going to stay with you until you get well. But there's a dynamic that really shifts.
What is it that makes the Beast worthy of being saved and redeemed, and Gaston not worthy of it? What is she seeing
Good question.
in Beast?
I think she can see in Beast that there's someone that has been fundamentally good has been damaged, and that kind of just needs rehabilitating almost, and is just in need of love. Whereas Gaston is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, who is someone who has had nothing but love and admiration and easiness, and because he's never suffered, he doesn't have any empathy. He's essentially a narcissist. So in that way, I see Beast and Gaston as opposites, and on opposite ends of the spectrum.
They each have their entourage. Beast has his household full of living clocks and candelabra, and Gaston has his villagers who adore him. They have paintings of him in the pub, and the women are all swooning over him. He's so cruel to them.
Yeah.
But Beast is loving in his gruff way toward his
That's so true.
people.
I think there's like an intentional cruelty with Gaston, which is about building himself up by pushing others down. Whereas with Beast, there's kind of, you can tell he's being unkind because he's so unkind to himself, and he feels so terrible on the inside that
it's a defense mechanism.
Yeah, that it's a defense mechanism, and he doesn't see himself as being very worthy. That kind of reflects how he interacts with everyone and everything.
I mean, it's a very old story. It goes back, there have been versions of Beauty and the Beast going back to the 2nd century, and it's, there's been some criticism of it that it's like a woman in an abusive relationship. I can save him. I don't really see it that way. I presume you don't either. But why? What do you say to that type of concern that it suggests to girls, stick with that abusive boyfriend, maybe you can fix him?
Right.
Why do you think that's not the case?
It's such a good question, and it was something I really grappled with at the beginning. The kind of Stockholm Syndrome question about this story. So I did some reading about Stockholm Syndrome. Stockholm Syndrome is where a prisoner will take on the characteristics of and fall in love with, in this sort of really strange way, their captor. Belle actively argues and disagrees with him constantly. She has none of the characteristics of someone with Stockholm Syndrome, because she keeps her independence of mind. And I also think that there is a very intentional switch where, in my mind, Belle decides to stay. She gives as good as she gets. He bangs on the door, she bangs back, and there's this defiance that, you think I'm going to come and eat dinner with you, and I'm your prisoner, I'm your cat? Absolutely not. And it's only when and I think that's the other beautiful thing about the love story, is that they form a friendship first. And that gap in the middle where there is this genuine sharing and this real friendship, the love builds out of that. Which in many ways I actually think is more meaningful than a lot of love stories where it was love at first sight and you're dealing with all of these kind of projections. Beast and Belle begin their love story really irritating each other and really not liking each other very much. Slowly builds to friendship, slowly, very slowly builds to them falling in love. That is a big problem with a lot of traditionally written fairy tales, is that you're like, so the girl's just going to give up her entire existence and everything that's important to her for this guy. That's, and that seems to be like this recurring theme, which is like, whoa, this is,
Even Belle
but
goes that way, because she's so in love with fairy tales at the beginning of the story and finding her Prince Charming.
She does sing about her Prince Charming, but I think he's kind of, the sense that I got from Belle is that he's a bit of an afterthought. She's much more interested about getting out there and traveling and reading, and I think as well, like, Prince Charming is someone that comes along and understands her. She's waiting for someone that makes her feel understood in some way.
Now, did you have any conversations with Paige O'Hara, who voiced the character?
I didn't know.
Back in the animated days?
It's interesting. I've done a few movies where I play, someone's played my character before, or that, my character exists in real life, and I've always chosen not to. I think because in the act of creation, you want to make sure that you're bringing something individual and original, and a big part of it was wanting to stay faithful to the original telling. And I hope we really got the balance right of being like, okay, we're going to offer you some new stuff that you've never seen before, but we're also going to give you the heart of the original.
Everybody has their own unique way to brighten their day, which is why every Dunkin' latte, cappuccino, and macchiato is carefully crafted with espresso and milk, just the way you like it. Your coffee, your Dunkin'.
You've been through this yourself on the other side of it, though, handing off Hermione Granger to Noma Dumuzwene on Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. You've met her and talked. What are your conversations like about Hermione? Now this is a character you both share.
Oh, it was so strange. It was so emotional seeing Noma's performance in a way that I had not anticipated at all. I went to the play really just this will be great. I'll be interested to see. And didn't even realize until she walked in the room and just spontaneously just burst into tears. It was such an emotional moment for me, I can't tell you. But it was such a relief, because I think I'd played that character so intensely up until that point, to know that Hermione was going to be okay. I know that sounds crazy, but to know that everything turned out all right, and everything in the world was okay, and that there was someone else carrying her on and carrying her forward, and it was just such a relief. It made me so happy, because otherwise, I don't know, playing someone that, we get that little flash forward at the end of the last film, but playing someone that kind of just gets stuck in time at 20 years old, 19 years old, was no, I wanted her to have a future.
Well, you see so many years of her life back to back to back, and then nothing. So it was sort of a relief. You obviously care a lot about the character.
It was a relief. And again, it just feels so lucky to play someone that I sort of care about as much as I care about Hermione, and that kind of, in a way, does feel like an extension of some of the essence of Hermione too.
When you talk to her, do you feel like you have a mutual friend in Hermione? Like you both know her so well?
Oh, definitely. And that was the other weird thing, is that Noma was a complete stranger, but that I felt like I'd known forever. It was really, I can't tell you, there was just an instant, intimacy, connection. Oh, we're totally on the same, It's crazy.
So obviously Belle loves books. That's her thing. She's a bookworm. You are too. You have our shared shelf.
Yes.
The book club. What are you reading at the moment? What's occupying?
We're actually reading The Vagina Monologues by Eve Ensler. And Eve Ensler's written a ton of great books, actually. So I had already seen the play before, so I'm kind of delving into a few of her other ones as well. I remember my mum taking me to see it when I was still pretty young, and I was horrified by the whole thing. I was because it's such a stigmatized topic, and Eve just boldly and bravely kind of just takes a pickaxe to all of the walls, to all of everything. And so you end up, if you bring it up as a topic, you end up having amazing conversations with people.
People know you for He for She,
Yes.
the United Nations Solidarity Movement, bringing men into feminism, in supporting their friends and sisters and mothers. And what's the latest with that program? What can you tell us about where that is and your involvement with it?
Yeah, I think the other thing that was really important for me about that movement was men understanding that it was also not just them helping their sisters or their friends, but kind of in a way helping or saving themselves in order to make themselves more full and more human and more whole, and cherishing what we often consider to be feminine qualities, instead of kind of sweeping them under a rug or trying to pretend that they don't exist, or just generally devaluing them. What I would really love to focus on is there's a lot of missing data in that we have about women and girls, and there's a lot of these gaps that I'd love to try and fill and get some more information on, because when you can show the data on something, it makes something visible, and it's very difficult to treat a problem that you just don't have.
Like what kind of problem?
Gosh, everything from sexual violence to FGM to literacy rates to everything really. Often because we often don't measure a lot of things that happen within what we consider to be the private sphere. So this year, I really want to focus on statistics and information and data collection.
What do you think is like the primary blind spot that guys have about this movement, about feminism, about doing the right thing? Just what is it that we're not seeing?
I think the word is really difficult because it seems to inherently suggest a preferential treatment of the feminine over the masculine because it has the feminine in the word, and I think that's a real oversight and a misunderstanding.
Rather than just basic fairness.
Rather than just gender, just gender equality across the board. This isn't girls are better than boys, boys are better than girls. This is just everyone deserves a fair chance at whatever it is. I think also because a lot of prejudice and certainly misogyny is so normalized, it's like it's right under people's noses. So when you raise it, there's kind of like we've dealt with that. Women got the vote ages ago. Like this isn't a thing. And then when you start to kind of unravel it for people, they go, oh, I didn't think about that, or I didn't think about this. And if I were to say I was a feminist, it would be a personal attack on you as a man, as opposed to a patriarchal system or something much larger than an individual person. I think also men think that they can't be feminists. That's a big misunderstanding. Some of the best feminists I know are men.
Why do you think they feel they can't? Like that's not masculine if you're a feminist?
Yeah, that it's not masculine if you're feminist, that only women can be feminists because it's about, again, it comes back down to that misunderstanding of
to the word. They have his feminine, so I can't be.
Yeah, so I can't touch that. That's I like to joke about the man box, which is like you can only be a man if you fulfill these certain qualities and you stay within this square of like you're in your man box and you're safe in the man box. And something for some men about going near feminism is a step out of the man box.
Because they know it's just so fragile.
It's just gonna fragile. I know it's going to fall apart.
They need to hold that box
identity
together.
Structure, Definitely. And I really sense that. And also, no one likes to feel that there's blame attached to that word, and I think that's very difficult to deal with.
Everybody has their own unique way to brighten their day, which is why every Dunkin' latte, cappuccino, and macchiato is carefully crafted with espresso and milk, just the way you like it. Your coffee, your Dunkin'.
What do you think it is in pop culture that makes guys so resistant to women as like superhero characters? I cover the Star Wars films as well, and certainly it's not the majority of the fandom at all, but there is a certain subset that doesn't like that the last two Star Wars movies, the two new ones, both star women, both are focused on women as the main character. You see this sometimes with like the female Ghostbusters movie too, like you're ruining my childhood by casting women in these parts. Why is it they don't accept women in these roles when women have been accepting guys in these roles for a long time and love Star Wars and Luke Skywalker even though he was a boy and they weren't? What is it that, why are women able to accept it and guys are not?
Well, it's
some guys.
It's something that they're not used to and they don't like that. Anything that deviates from the norm is difficult to accept. I think if you've been used to watching characters that look like, sound like, think like you, and then you see someone up on the screen that you go, well, that's a girl, she doesn't look like me. I want it to look like me so that I can project myself onto the character. Whereas women are great at doing that anyway. We see whoever's on screen and we recognize the human qualities in the man that we relate to, and there's not such a gap. But for some reason, there's some kind of barrier there where they're like, I don't want to relate to a girl. Often I feel like, the superheroes that, if I asked a young boy what superhero they looked up to, I feel a lot fewer would say a female one. or would ever use an example of a
Wonder
female
Woman or
one
Black Widow. Yeah, they wouldn't.
than in reverse, which is a shame because I feel like we need to live in a culture that values and respects and looks up to and idolizes women as much as men. So I think that's starting to slowly change, but it is something that I feel like it does actively need to be addressed.
You hear people talk about, obviously Carrie Fisher just passed away, and women will talk about how important that character was to them.
Yeah.
Princess Leia was a touchstone. For me, I have a 7-year-old daughter, and Rey is her
Touchstone.
idol. And she loves Princess Leia too, but Rey is for her. Do you feel like Hermione is on that spectrum too? Do you hear
Definitely.
from, I guess, little girls now, but also people who were in their 20s who grew up with your films, that they connected with Hermione? She was smart and she wasn't ashamed of that.
No.
She wasn't too concerned about winning over the boys.
No.
She was more interested in being herself, except for when she had polyjuice potion.
I feel like, yes, 100%. But I feel like, Hermione was that perfect example of turning on its head this initial prejudice that she gets, which is that you're bossy, you're this, you're that. But Hermione finds a way to wield her intelligence and become the leader in this group of two other boys, and that's kind of the role that she assumes. Harry is much more intuitive. Ron is just along for the ride. Hermione is the one with the plan. She's the one with the plan. She's in control, and I think somehow that gave other women permission to feel that they were allowed to take up space, and they were allowed to do that. And what's so fundamentally beautiful about Hermione is her loyalty to that group of friends. In a way, she's really the glue that keeps that trio together. So her role it's fundamental, and the boys know it, and they really treat her with respect, as if they know that. Yeah.
Did you face that growing up? Did you have people telling you to do, as we talked about with Belle, to stay a certain way, focus on certain things? What type of obstacles were thrown in your path?
The amount of positive feedback I would get from looking pretty and like putting on a nice dress and smiling nicely and doing all of that, the amount of like affirmation and validation that would come with me spending time doing that versus studying for months and reading something interesting and being passionate about something and talking about it. I mean, that would barely get a side glance, but like there's so much.
So if you showed up on a red carpet looking beautiful, you'd get a lot of attention for that. But if you gave a speech or talked about something,
as a young woman, when it just felt this is really depressing. Like I've put so much of myself into whatever this thing is, and ultimately all anyone seems to care about is this other thing. That's not just me. I know I'm in a very unusual and unique set of circumstances, but I have lots of other female friends who'll be like, I gave a presentation, it was 20 minutes long, and someone just said, oh, like, why are you wearing that weird pantsuit? And they were like, that's what you took away from 20 minutes of what I just said? It's like, it's really hard. So I think that's a tough one. I think that's a really tough one.
You had a choice. I mean, you went to college, and you had a choice then to either continue acting or pursue something else. You majored in English literature, is that right? What made you decide that acting was then going to become the main event and not just something you used to do?
Perks of Being a Wallflower.
Really?
Really. Yeah, it's so funny because I went to college and I was genuinely kind of like, well, I'm going to go study and then I'll kind of like, I'll see what happens. And then Steve sent me the script for Perks of Being a Wallflower, and I went and I sat down with him, and it just reignited this. I was like...
Had you read the book before you read the script?
No, I hadn't. So I read the book, and it just gave me this weird compulsion. I was like, I have to tell this story. Oh my God, if I don't do this, nothing else makes sense. Like, I don't want to spend my time doing anything other than making sure that this movie gets made.
I must go to Pittsburgh.
I must go to Pittsburgh. I must get funding for this movie. And it's like, and it was really strange because I just didn't know coming out of Harry Potter whether I was going to feel that way about anything else for a long time. You know, I had loved performing and I had loved acting, but really a big part of the passion for me was that I just loved those stories and I wanted to be part of that world. And I loved who that character was. And it wasn't so much for me about the idea of being an actress. It was the idea of, like, I just want to be part of this. And Perks and working with Steve and feeling that I had something else to give and offer was what really did that for me.
Do you write? Are you interested in writing?
I do write, but I think when I write my best, I'm writing about something that I'm either so angry or so passionate about that it kind of just comes out. For me, writing is like an overflow. Writing is like, oh, like I have all this stuff and I need to get it out of me somehow, and I put it all down on paper. It's therapy, and it's like trying to work things out in my own mind and trying to understand better what's going on in here.
The following ad is being condensed for your viewing convenience.
So I just switched to Geico.
What took you so long?
I know, I saved a ton of money on car insurance.
That's what I'm talking about.
Geico also gives you 24/7 access to licensed agents.
Booyah!
So has there been a woman in this business who has been inspiring to you, who's helped you along? We've talked about obstacles and people not valuing what you have to offer, but has there been another woman who said, here's how you clear those?
For me, I think my big like aha moment, or my big feeling of like, wow, there's like this whole cavalry that are coming to my support and women that I can call and try to make sense of things, was more when I became a part of the feminist movement, and it was meeting people like Gloria Steinem and Sheryl Sandberg and Bell Hooks and, you know, and Eve Ensler and Caitlin Moran. It's really the women whose books I started reading and then was fortunate enough to meet and speak to, who made me feel that something that a set of circumstances I had been taking very personally were in fact not personal at all, but actually part of a systematic and much larger and bigger thing than myself.
Do you think things are getting better on that front? Is the arc toward improvement, or do you feel like we're backsliding?
Taking the longer, larger view, we are always slowly moving towards progress, but it does feel as though we take one step forward, we go back a bit, we make progress, there's a pushback. There's always a pushback. When anything comes under pressure, when anything is difficult, one of the first things to go, or one of the first things that tends to be attacked, when people is women's rights, is women's reproductive rights. Women's liberty is one of the first things that people try to curtail. It's an easy way to try and feel that things are being better controlled if women are kept nicely and neatly in their place.
There's a lot of talk in this business about female directors, and women are editors, they're writers, they're producers, but there are very few female directors overall. Why do you think that is?
Oh, we're not even on the scale. I think we're less than 5%. I don't know, because you look at people like Catherine Bigelow and you look at Ava DuVernay, and you're like, you know, these are explosive. These are explosive movies that they direct. There's a big diversity problem there that has to be addressed. It really does.
Are they being kept out, do you think, or is it
I think
something else? They're not, because women are present in these other fields in filmmaking.
It's a double prong effect, which is that because there are fewer role models, because we see fewer women doing it, I think fewer women are able to see themselves doing it, have the confidence to see that they could do it, think they can do it. So it's partly internal, and then I think it's also external. There's just a blanket level of prejudice about women's capacities in that role, and just a lack of confidence of just like, I'm going to give you that check for X million dollars to go and make this movie. There's a gap there that doesn't seem to be able to be bridged. I don't know if it's a trust, I don't know what it is.
That there's like some psychological hang up among the people who have the power to greenlight these things, that they don't give that shot to a young female director.
Yeah, and I think also there's a genre idea of like, well, this is a movie about buildings exploding and fights and superheroes, so a woman can't direct that. This has to have a man directing it because it's about explosions and fights and stuff, so only a guy can do that. It's like, there's just kind of there's a way that things have been done for a very long time, and you almost need to like open up new neural pathways in people's minds. You need to expand people's vision. You need to get people out of comfortable habits and patterns in order to see new possibilities.
Well, I want to ask you about your next project, The Circle, with James Ponsoldt. It's based on another book by Dave Eggers. This is about technology and its role in our lives. How we are sort of constantly surveilled. I mean, we are today, we self-surveil. We tweet about where we are, write about on Facebook about where we are, but this takes it to another level. What does it have to say about life in 2017?
I think that's what's so fun about this movie, is that this is not a dystopian future that's set in, 2050 or something. This could be basically tomorrow. I mean, this is kind of an uncomfortably close film about where, if we aren't careful, we could very easily go, in that technology is advancing us and giving us so much and empowering us in so many amazing ways. It's also handing over potentially huge amounts of information, and information is power. I think even more than money in a way.
Tom Hanks plays a sort of Steve Jobs type
he
character.
plays this kind of incredibly likable, genius
Big Brother
figure who, is kind of, he has an amazing way of explaining things that doesn't make it feel like your civil liberties are being taken out of your hands. He's kind of perfect for the role because he's so charming, as so much of this stuff is. It's shiny and exciting, and you turn on your phone and you get this big dopamine hit. It's really addictive.
Do you find social media to be empowering, or do you find it depressing and
equal parts depressing and terrifying, and equal parts empowering and thrilling? I think that's the key, really, is bearing in mind the kind of, I really draw a super conscious line between what is public and what is private. And that has kind of helped me maintain a certain degree of sanity, because having people wade in and give an opinion on absolutely everything about me would just destroy me as a human being. I would not be able to. I would just be a shell of a human.
Like people are criticizing who you're dating or how you're spending your time.
There are certain things which are inevitable and which I've got used to, but censoring yourself and watching yourself and also I notice so